On Joy News Prime, Bank of Ghana launches new high-denomination currency notes to be circulated from next week. It says should make transactions more convenient.
These new higher value denominations will only restore partially the dollar value of the higher denomination to about 40 US dollars, which is not quite close to the levels in 2007, but high enough to significantly reduce the deadweight burden and high transaction costs in making high-value purchases in a cash-based economy like Ghana.
The minority in Parliament wants the new notes withdrawn. Government spokesperson on finance and economy isn't quite convinced about the rationale for the introduction of the new notes. Now, out there on the streets, some members of the public are in love with the new notes, whilst others believe it is needless.
We should be more careful. We won't misplace a note because I believe so lose one note, I'll be bleeding.
We'll be getting further clarity on the new notes and the reason why they are necessary from our guests from the Bank of Ghana and from Aberdeen, Scotland. Meanwhile, in business,
Bank of Ghana downplays impact of new higher denomination currency notes on inflation rates and election year budget overruns.
That does not increase the total currency in circulation.
Also in the bulletin, senior staff of Gridco warn transmission of electricity could take a hit next week if huge debts owed the company by the Electricity Company of Ghana and others are not settled. We'll be bringing you the details. I'm Israel and Joy News Prime comes to you live from the Joy News studio here in Accra with digital address GA09925539. Stay tuned in. In our first story, the Bank of Ghana will next week circulate 2 new higher denomination CD notes and a 2 CD coin in a move the governor says will complement the existing series to ensure customer convenience and bring about efficiency in the printing of currency to generate savings for the country. That's the exact quote from the governor. He goes on to explain.
The purpose for this meeting is to inform you of the introduction of 2 higher denomination CD bank notes and the 2 Ghana CD coins. As you may recall, in May this year, the Bank of Ghana put into circulation upgraded banknotes of the Ghana CD. The rationale for upgrading the banknotes was primarily to enhance the security features of the banknotes in the context of an evolving technological landscape and to bring on board features that will secure the currency and make it difficult for counterfeiting. The review exercise, which involved conducting a nationwide survey with market operators, businesses, and international stakeholders, as well as some empirical exercise. The outcome of all of this revealed the resurgence of deadweight burden issues of the economy due to past significant inflation and perennial depreciation of the currency, and the significant increase in the demand for higher denomination banknotes and the increased cost of printing. Today, in line with the results of the exercise, the Bank of Ghana is introducing a new 2 Ghana CD coin and the 100 Ghana CD and 200 Ghana CD banknote denominations into circulation to complement the existing series to ensure customer convenience and bring about efficiency in the printing of currency to generate savings for the country. These new higher value denominations will only restore partially the dollar value of the higher denomination to about 40 US dollars, which is not quite close to the levels in 2007, but high enough to significantly reduce the deadweight burden and high transaction costs in making high-value purchases in a cash-based economy like Ghana. Ladies and gentlemen, the introduction of these high-value notes should not be misinterpreted to mean a shift away from the central bank's policy of pursuing a cashless society and promoting the use of electronic modes of payments. While vigorously pursuing financial inclusion by accelerating the migration to e-payment platforms, we are also mindful of the relevance of cash in our day-to-day dealings. Undeniably, cash still remains the preferred medium of payment by the large informal sector in the country. This is why we continue to pay attention to the enhancements in the structure, security features, and management of cash within the economy. This will stay with us for some time. In the coming days, the Bank of Ghana will embark on a nationwide campaign to educate the general public on.
Now, the head of issue of the Bank of Ghana, he attempts to clarify all that the governor has said.
No, Bank of Ghana is doing a lot of work in electronic payment systems and also digitization of currency. However, we should not forget about the fact that we have a lot of the population who is cash-based. So those facts are there, and that area has to be tackled. It means that we have to make cash transaction more efficient and also reduce the cost of cash transactions. And to do that, we have to reduce the deadweight burden associated with cash transaction. If you're doing high value transaction, the volume of cash that you would want to use to do that transaction should be optimized. That is the rationale behind this introduction.
All right, so Mr. Dominick Cruz also goes on to explain the features of the new currency. Let's watch.
I mean, this is the 100 Ghana cedi note I'm holding. And normally, the note must belong to a family. So there should be consistency in the thematic appeal, the design, aesthetics of the note. That is why on these notes, we still maintain the general family picture. So here we have the image of the Big Six, as we see the Independence Arch, and then the watermark, which is in the shape of Tetekwashi and the cocoa pod. But then what is prominent and technologically advanced on this note is what we call the surface stripe. And I want to point to the surface stripe. The surface stripe is the feature I'm covering or I'm pointing to. This feature is a three-dimensional feature and is the first introduction of this sort in the world. We have the feature we call, still the modern feature we call the surface stripe. Now on this note, we have the declared symbol oligod, which is the ball on the note. So when you look at the note, you see this ball as if it's 3D, as if you can pick it, but you cannot pick it. Now behind the ball, underneath it, you see the declared symbol oligod all across. In the middle of the same feature, you see the state sword. And when you tilt the note, the star on the state sword begins to expand and contract. So look at it. I hope you can see it. The star expands and contracts. Also on the left lower corner of the note, we see an enlarged Jinyame symbol, which is here. When I tilt the note, you see a gold bar moving up and down the banknote. These movements are very, very necessary for authentication.
All right, so Dominick Cruz has joined me in the studio, and we have here not the specimen currency or the specimen notes. This is actually the actual currency. So actually, I can actually use this.
Exactly.
I can take this and
please.
Thank you very much. So I have a note to myself.
Great.
Right. In essence, the Bank of Ghana says the reason for the introduction of these new notes is to ensure customer convenience. That's putting the customer at the heart of it. So who are the people who believe they need these large denominations? Joining me in the studio with answers to this and other questions is Dominick Cruz, who is the head of currency processing at the Bank of Ghana. Thank you very much for making time to join us.
Thank you.
And also joining us via Skype is Theo Champong, an economist based in Aberdeen, Scotland. I'll start. I'll come to you, Theo, in a bit, but I'll start with you, Mr. Owusu. Can you simplify the introduction, the argument for the introduction of these new currency notes?
Okay, so thank you very much for this opportunity. I think normally, as a country, we must always review the structure of our currency.
All right.
The recent one was done just in 2007.
Okay.
And realized that we removed 4 zeros. We focus on 3 main things: customer convenience, efficiency of cash transactions, and then cost effectiveness.
Okay.
So when we look at the customer convenience, if you want to make a purchase or buy something worth 100 Ghana cedis,
Yeah.
you don't go and use 100 pieces of 1 Ghana cedi.
No.
So for convenience of that transaction,
Yeah.
if you have a few pieces of 50,
If you have,
or 1 piece of 100,
okay,
or 2 pieces of 50,
or if you have 10 pieces of 10,
10,
you're fine.
Fantastic.
If you have 5 pieces of 20, you're fine.
Fantastic. But the question is that the relativity in the costs of printing these notes goes from about 1:2 from the lowest to the highest.
Okay.
So you don't want to spend too much money printing the 1 Ghana cedi, which will cost just about half of the cost of about of the 50 cedi,
Okay.
and then making it very expensive for that transaction.
Okay.
So this is why I talk about its cost effectiveness.
Okay.
And then also not carrying a lot of notes. So putting these 3 things together, the Bank of Ghana technically reviews the structure of the note, and this work was started in 2017.
All right.
To make sure that we look at where we place, first of all, the note coin boundary, where the boundary is between the coins and the note, and then how high you can go. So it's about, first of all, customer convenience, efficiency of the transactions, and then the cost effectiveness of the issuance.
Okay. I think you've sold me on the cost effectiveness.
Yes.
Of the. Now, what proportion of the population did you have in mind when you thought of these new notes? I think, how many of these people do you believe would appreciate this move?
All right, so the redenomination was happened in 2007. At the time of the redenomination, we realized that we didn't have the 50 and the 20 going into ATMs.
Okay.
So normally you look at demand and supply. Currently, if you go into any ATM, you find that you have the 10, the 20s, and the 50s. That means that customers are demanding higher denomination because these notes have now become transaction notes.
Okay.
I hope it's clear. And if you look at the cash in circulation and you look at the ratios across the various denominations, you see that right from 2007, where we had close to about the higher denomination forming about between 10 to 20% of it. Currently, we have those higher denominations going to about 70%.
Okay.
And that shows you that it is moving in the higher denomination. But we should not lose track of the fact that we still need the lower denominations
Granted.
for exchangeability reasons.
All right.
That is why the bank has seen it very necessary to also make sure that efficiently we have coins in the lower denomination. Because I can tell you that these lower denominations, the 1s and 2s, they come into circulation, they only spend close to about 6 months, and the country have to spend money to print them. But then the coins will spend close to about 15 years.
Okay. So we're still staying with this conversation and about, I still haven't gotten any answers as far as why or what proportion of the population is demanding this, or do you believe you're satisfying with the introduction of these?
So we did a lot of work. As I said, we started with close to about 2017, and we've been doing a lot of work, and as counties always review their currency, we did our work. And when you're doing this work, you use what we call the average labor wage.
Yeah.
You use that to do the calculation. And from the scenarios we did, we realized that if you take the whole population, you're looking at close to about 30 to 40% requiring this higher denomination. But then it doesn't, the fact of the matter is not about what percentage of the denomination. What is necessary is about the convenience. If you need to carry, let me say you want to carry close to about 100 people from point A to point B, you don't go and use a taxi that will be carrying 4 people.
Okay.
You need a bus.
Okay.
So you need to do cost-benefit analysis.
Right. So how many people, how much cash are you trying to move, or in this analogy that you're trying to create?
Okay. So here, there is no effect on the currency in circulation. It's the ratios that we are moving.
Okay.
So generally, the currency in circulation continues to stay.
For instance, you introduced this currency because maybe people have to move huge sums of money.
Yes.
And I want to understand, why would people actually want to move huge sums of money, of cash?
Ghana is a cash-based economy.
Yes.
Let's not lose track of the
fine.
fact that.
So why would people, I'm trying to get you to explain to us why people would want to move huge, especially because lots of people in this country won't probably come into contact with huge sums of money.
Yes.
And just for demonstration purposes, Gomez, can you please pull up the 50 CD notes bundle that comes to 100,000 CDs, so that we can use that just for illustration. So that's 100,000 CDs.
Okay.
It can fit easily into a polythene bag. And about 90% of the population may never come into contact with 100,000 CDs cash. You appreciate that?
No, that's not true.
Okay, you tell me why.
Because as I said to you, we have done the analysis, and currently we see that close to about, so we were looking at the ratios and the growth of the higher denomination.
I haven't held 100,000 CDs cash before.
Oh, you haven't held that?
No.
Oh, that is amazing. But then
Have you?
the analysis indicates to us that we are now seeing the higher denomination growing from close to about 10 to 15, 20, 10 to 20%, and now we have about 70% of the cash in circulation represented by the higher denominations.
The cash in circulation, but how many people are holding it? That's the point I'm trying to make.
It's the economy, it's in the economy, and people are using it for transactions. People go for the cash in from their ATMs. People go for the cash so it's all over.
All right. At this point, I'd like to bring in Theo Achampong. Theo Achampong is an economist. He's based in Aberdeen, Scotland. So, Theo, the question I have for you is, what are some of the considerations that would typically go into these decisions? Decisions to, produce higher denominated currencies. And before that, though, what's the largest denomination you've encountered in Scotland?
Well, in the UK, the highest denomination is actually £50, and that has been in circulation since 1725.
£50
or so. Yes, but in relative terms, in Ghanaian terms, that's using a factor of 6. That's about 350 or 400 cedis. In relative terms. So yes, it's quite a substantial currency. However, you don't get £50 or you don't see £50 every day. Okay. So for example, if I go to the ATM in the UK here, you can only get 10s and 20s. That's the maximum. And then if I want to get £50, I actually have to go to the banking hall and present like some form of ID to be able to, get the higher denomination amounts out. But they are not in regular circulation.
All right. So then that brings me back to the first question I was asking. What are some of the considerations that will go into a decision by a central bank to issue these higher denominated currencies?
I think, as the Bank of Ghana representative there was saying, fundamentally the structure of the economy, has changed, and there's a lot more demand for certain types of, of currency. So, for example, whereas 10 or even 7 years ago, 20 cedis would have sufficed. At the moment, when I come to Ghana and I'm running around, and just 2 months ago, I went to the bank to withdraw 4,000 cedis. I was actually given 20 cedi notes, and lots of them. And I asked the teller, can I get 50 notes of these? Just to make it easier for me to carry around. I don't want to be carrying, polythene bag, sackloads of cash around. And I think you can see that there is a real demand and there's a real appetite, for these higher, currencies. But what that really reflects is that the value of the currency has significantly depreciated over the period. And also we've had rising levels of inflation. And therefore, what you would have had 20 cedis doing for you 5-6 years ago cannot necessarily do the same. So people are in effect substituting that for the 50 cedi denomination notes. So that, I think, those are some of the drivers that would have gone into that decision making.
All right, Theo, I will come back to you, but let me quickly speak with Mr. Owusu here. So you heard Theo talk about the fact that you don't easily come across the highest denomination that they have in the UK, which is a £50 note. Are we going to apply same to our station here, or we're just going to release 200 cedis to whoever wants it?
Okay, so the fact is clear that we find the ATMs now taking the 50 Ghana cedi, as he has rightly said. Yeah. Depreciation, inflation has eroded and has reduced the face value. So the real value of the note currently, if you take the 50 Ghana cedi, is less than $20. Okay. So definitely, I think even though we have introduced these higher denominations, it's not a transaction note.
I'd like you to reiterate that for me.
Good. So it's not a banknote that you send to the market to go and buy something worth 1 cedi.
Okay.
So we classify currency into change, transaction, and store of value. Okay. So for the change, they are the lower denomination. That is why, if you look at the banknote, the 1 Ghana cedi and 2, banknotes, the rule of thumb says that any banknote that you use to buy newspapers and other things like that, you don't keep them in notes. That is why the Bank of Ghana...
So the point I just want you to make is that this is not going to be a transactional note?
The daily transactional note, but store value or heavy, high value transactions.
So how do you how do you get access to this?
To the banks, just like he said, it's not going to be issued through ATMs. So if you need them and you need to do a transaction note to do high value transactions, you go to the bank and you get them.
All right. Now, one other question I'd want to ask you is, how much sensitization has been done as far as the banks are concerned? Because they are the ones that are supposed to be handling these new notes. And yet they're going into circulation next week, from next week. Have the ATMs been calibrated? Have their money counting machines and counterfeit detectors been calibrated? How much work has been done on that? The staff that are supposed to be handling the notes, how well do they know these notes?
Thank you. So I think that we've done an introduction, they're launching today.
And it's going into circulation next week?
Next week.
It should be in the banks next week?
It should be in the banks next week. So what we are seeking to do is that we have what we call a recirculation policy. So we have manufacturers of machines and suppliers of machines that we have their list, we are in contact with them. So we are bringing them in.
You're now bringing them in?
We are already doing that.
But the banks?
That is, they service the machines, they work with the banks. They work with the banks. So those are the guys that we collaborate with them to make sure that all the security features are calibrated. By the way, these security features that you have shown are only for the public. We have features for machines and other things, and those are the ones that we are going to calibrate. And I can promise you that within next week we'll fix all.
Within
those.
Next week,
yes.
But next week is when we're introducing the currency.
Yes. So we are currently working with the radio stations, and I'm also here And this is part of the education that we are doing.
Okay, so why are we looking at what we're trying to do, especially when we're trying to promote a cash-light economy? Don't you think this defeats the cash-light economy drive that we're trying to push?
Okay, so Ghana, the structure of the economy is cash-based.
It's true.
Bank of Ghana has made a lot of inroads, a lot of, we are growing into the electronic payment system. But let me tell you, the fact is that if I do mobile money transfers from point A to point B, at the point of transaction, almost about 90% of the population go for cash to do their transaction. So even though we are doing that aspect and trying to make sure that we promote electronic payment, we should not forget about the fact that cash is still there.
All right.
And we must make it efficient and make sure that customer convenience is also sought.
Now, I'll go to Theo Champon for your final thoughts on this. Now, what would you say? What are your final thoughts on all that has been said by Mr. Owusu?
I think the rationale being provided or being given for the introduction of the higher denomination is fair. I wouldn't question that. Perhaps maybe a little bit more public education needs to be addressed or needs to go into it. So I would expect the bank to double up its effort on that. I do recall in the run-up to the 2007 redenomination exercise, there was quite a lot of public sensitization campaign around that, but I haven't seen a similar campaign at the moment. But it's something that can be corrected in the medium to long term. But ultimately, the point really is that we have to shift or push into a cashless society. I concede that, yes, a lot of effort is going into it, for example, with the mobile money and then the interoperability systems. But we would want to actually push a lot more of these transactions. So, for example, what I would want to see is if I go to the bank and I want to do a transaction beyond a certain threshold, say 100,000 or 50,000 cedis, then there has to be a road that necessitates you to do that through electronic means. That's the first point. The second point is that, yes, we have a largely unbanked population. Mobile money has come in to part address the issue, but as the studio guest was saying, people are still withdrawing those Momo accounts and transacting in them in cedis, and then we have to then link that to actual bank accounts so that you can have end-to-end transfers without actually having to use physical cash. And I think if we push through on all these fronts, then we will be making quite a lot of significant inroads towards a cashless society.
All right. Thank you very much, Theo Champong. And we're going to take a break at this point, but we are not done with the conversation, and I'd urge you to stay a bit longer with us. So you're not leaving yet. Okay. So we'll be returning to have some more conversations on this, but still ahead in the bulletin, the Maritime Parliament wants a new notes withdrawn. The government spokesperson on finance and economy isn't quite convinced about the rationale. Hopefully, the conversations we've had would enlighten him a bit more. But still ahead, senior staff of GridCo, they are warning transmission of electricity could take a hit next week if huge debts owed the company by the Electricity Company of Ghana and others are not settled. All right, so you're still watching Joy News Prime, and we're returning to our conversation about the new currency notes that were introduced by launched by the Bank of Ghana today. We have been speaking to some members of the public who don't really seem to mind that we have these new notes. There are those, however, who believe it is needless. Let's hear them, and we'll continue the conversation.
Getting change for passengers have always created problems between the passenger and the meat. So we rather need more smaller notes, the coins.
It will help because you can get larger sums of money on you with just few notes.
With those in the market, even the 20 and 50 cedis notes, we find it difficult to find change for the customers. How much more this bigger note? 100.
The thing could be increased like 2 pesos or something, but because we don't value the coins, it automatically jump to 10 pesos and 20 pesos. It is worrying us. The statutory law that enforce us to use that money. It forces us to use the money.
It's a step in the right direction, because as a businessman, when I travel to bring goods from abroad, at times I can take like 20,000 of me, which is 200 million OCDs. Now that the 200 cedis and 100 cedis currency is in, I think it's going to help me.
Say we should be more careful. We won't misplace a note because my ability. So lose one note, I'll be ability.
Right, so those were some reactions there, and Mr. Dominick Cruz is still here with me in the studio. So thank you very much for agreeing to stay on so we can continue to enlighten the people. We've heard the reactions that have been shared there. Some of them are actually making reference to notes and coins that they can have for exchange. That's saying they can give out change to people. There are others too who actually believe that it's a good idea. There's this trader who says he would usually be carrying 20,000 cedis with him. And 20,000 cedis, if he has this, then it makes things easier. It's not that bulky. But that requires that we go back to the clarification we were making earlier, that this is not for transactional purposes.
Exactly.
So how do you get access to these notes?
Okay, so as I already said, these notes are not ATM banknotes. So no bank is going to put these banknotes in the ATM.
Okay, so the banks that are concerned that, well, we haven't calibrated our ATMs, it's not going to come in.
This is not going to come in the ATM.
All right.
Because it's quite a higher value, so you don't put them in ATMs.
All right.
Just like the guy we initially spoke to, he says that you don't find a £50 in ATMs. You don't find $100 in ATMs. In the same way, these notes are not going to go into ATMs.
Right. So how do you get access to it?
You get access from the bank over the counter. So if you need them, when you go to the bank and you want to make a withdrawal, then you get access to these notes. But it's not going to be an ATM-issued banknote, no.
But it will still be in circulation?
Of course. Of course. Once the banks are issuing them over the counter,
any special
authorization? No. It depends on the level of transaction, how much banknotes you want to carry, and as we said rightly, it's for the convenience of the customer.
But isn't this also going to encourage people who are involved in illicit money movement, so that somebody wants to buy a house for 4 million cedis? He finds it convenient, doesn't want to go through the banking system, where ideally you write a check, you give it to the one who's selling the house, the person puts it in the bank. So you can track the money that's flowing through the banking system. But here, this person carries 4 million cedis and hands it to somebody, and then he buys the house. You lose that aspect of the transaction.
Yes, but then I think the fact is that we are looking at customer convenience of transaction.
But convenience of transaction,
course,
but you're facilitating illicit money movement as well.
Of course, that possibility is there. But I think the Bank of Ghana is also going to make sure that there is a limit of transaction, how much you can take over the counter. I think that one is there.
But that one hasn't been set yet.
It's there. There's a policy on that.
So how much?
How much
can you not take?
Financial, I think for the third party is 5,000, and then I'll have to find out what it is for transactions that you can get over the counter.
Now, because this is a high denomination, doesn't the risk of it being counterfeited go a lot higher?
Okay, so this is why I must say that today, this banknote is the most technologically advanced note today. So, and then if you look at the images on the note, I don't know if you see it very well. Let me show it to the camera, yeah. If you look at the images, the security features, it is three-dimensional. So, and then, so the easy way of authenticating a banknote is first to look at it.
Right.
And then rub your finger across the note and make sure that it is tactile. You can feel the rough surfaces against an A4 sheet, which is smooth. And then thirdly, you tilt the banknote forward and backwards. Now, when you tilt the banknote, you see that there is a surface stripe. There's a line running from top to bottom.
Right.
And that line has the Edinkra symbol. For the 200, it has the Edinkra symbol, Jinyame, Holy God. And when you look at the banknote, okay, that way. When you look at the banknote, you see that there is a ball here. That's what I'm pointing to.
Yeah.
Now, that ball looks like it's projected. It looks like it is on top of a river. And then underneath it, you see the Edinkra symbol recessed.
All right.
So these things are things that you need to look at. Also, when you look at the lower left corner, you see this feature, which is the Edinkra symbol enlarged. When you tilt it, you see the gold line going across it.
We can see that now.
And that is what you need. And as far as world technology is concerned, these banknotes
are the most
advanced. And we don't expect anybody to even try to counterfeit it.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Dominick Cruz, who is the head of currency processing at the Bank of Ghana, for all the enlightenment. And I'm sure the conversations and the education will continue.
I would also want to say that we must always make sure we know the city, the security features, and we must always keep it clean.
All right.
Very, very, because this is the business card of the country, and this is what everybody holds. Okay. And this is what shows how clean the country is. So let's keep the currency clean.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, too. Now, moving on to other stories, transmission of power from the Ghana Grid Company, GRIDCO, could take a hit starting next week if heavy debts from key institutions like ECG, VALCO, and NEDCO are not settled. The indebtedness totaling 1 billion cedis, according to senior staff of the power transmitter, is crippling the activities. Last week, the association announced a roadmap for an industrial action to register their displeasure over what they described as an unpleasant situation. Included in that roadmap is a withdrawal of emergency services on plants and machines and hoisting of red bands on various installations at the company's premises. At a media briefing by the staff in Tema Friday, chairman of the association, Raphael Kono, said the only action which will stop them from embarking on a full-blown strike is a payment of the debts owed by the company.
Clad in red, the workers from Akonsombo and Accra stations earlier Friday joined their colleagues at the Tema head office to put into effect a roadmap to drum home their demands. The workers were disappointed over the handling of a huge indebtedness. Despite frantic efforts and actionable steps to retrieve their money since 2014, not much has been achieved. The senior staff will on Tuesday embark on a full-scale strike as part of a series of activities to amplify their demands. Here is chairman of the Senior Staff Association at GRIDCO, Raphael Kono.
We are saying that ECG, proud to the takeover of PDS, they owe us about 607 million Ghana cedis. VALCO owes us about $32 million as of September 30th, 2019. And then NEDCO, which is Northern Electricity Distribution Company, owes us in excess of 177 million Ghana cedis. Indeed, it has affected our operations because we have started talking about this debt way back from 2014, 2015, 2016, 2017, 2018. We are in 2019. And so for us, we are here today because we cannot do our maintenance effectively. As we speak now, our contractors who are on site working on the 330 transmission line, which is a major backbone to our power delivery, they have moved out of sight.
Raphael Connor has been sharing how the company's financial standing is deterring financiers and what that means to power transmission to Accra and other areas.
Recently, because of our financial challenges, the AFD loan of about $173 million, the financiers stopped, and they were becoming apprehensive because when they see our debt situation, they realize we are not going to be able to meet the payment. So they were demanding sovereign guarantee, so that if GRICO is not able to pay, they can fall on government. In fact, government guaranteed that loan for us, but it doesn't mean government is going to pay for GRICO. GRICO is going to pay on its own. It is just that government has guaranteed that should the unexpected happen and GRICO is not able to pay, government will step in. But even government guaranteed that loan at an interest of 0.05% of the total loan to GRICO. And it's also a cost to GRICO. So even though it's a government agency, GRICO has a self-autonomy to go out and take loans and other things and finance its operations.
The workers, who remain resolute, say nothing will stop them this time except the huge indebtedness is cleared. Kwame Yankas reports for Joy News.
Government has been challenged to invest more in ending the soaring levels of non-communicable diseases in the country. Ghana Non-Communicable Disease Alliance Dr. Beatrice Juafi Adai says non-communicable diseases such as diabetes, hypertension, cardiovascular disease, among others, are responsible for the death of 15 million people between the productive ages of 39 and 69 years each year. She was speaking at a workshop in Kumasi. There's more in this report.
Non-communicable diseases kill more than 94,000 people in Ghana annually, accounting for about 42% of all deaths at a time when healthcare costs are rising. Chairperson of the Ghana Non-Communicable Disease Alliance and President of Breast Care International, Dr. Beatrice Juafi Adai, is urging government to take proactive action in responding to the epidemic in Ghana.
Every year, more than 41 million people die from the non-communicable diseases. More than 41 million people. And we are still sitting and watching unconcerned. Most of the people who are dying from the non-communicable diseases are dying from the low and middle income countries, and we are in the center. And so, how long should we sit? Can't we do anything about it? If during the short period of the Second World War, every country, the whole world, all the continents came together and to stop the war so that they would put a stop to the number of people who are dying, why are we looking on every year 41 million people dying from cancers, diabetes, hypertension, mental health, sickle cell disease, autoimmune diseases, and all these NCDs that we have? We can do something about it. And I think it's starting from the civil society organizations. We are a force to reckon with.
For Joy News, Kwesi Debra.
Health Matters was brought to you by
Camel Buy and Fly to Dubai promo.
I got this. Say yes to life.
President Nana Akufo-Addo has cut short for construction of a multi-purpose dam at Pologu in the Talented district of the Upper East region. The dam, which is expected to be completed in 50 months, will help curb perennial floods in the Upper East region, often worsened by the spillage of the Bagri Dam in neighboring Burkina Faso. The dam will also be used for the generation of electricity. Joy News' Upper East correspondent Albert Ore covered the sword cutting ceremony, and here's his report read to you.
The Talented district of the Upper East region is usually one of the worst affected areas during perennial floods. Last year, for example, hectares of farmlands were destroyed following torrential rains, coupled with the spillage of excess water from the Bagri Dam in neighboring Burkina Faso. Between August and September, Journeys visited Pologu on several occasions to speak to farmers affected by the floods.
If we can have a canoes or life jackets so that we, those who can swim small, we can use the life jackets and be carrying our food small to the uplands. Other than that, in fact, there will be hunger in Ghana this year because northern sector is feeding the country.
We all understand that it is not the rainwater that is causing this flood. The water is they always opened Bagri Dam and it comes to affect us. So why government and the technocrats not to think of maybe having a dam that can at least store that water?
Plans to construct a multipurpose dam in this area to help control the floods and also for irrigation purposes have been on the table for many years, but they never materialized. The current NPP government has, however, decided to make the Polugu multipurpose dam project a reality. On Friday afternoon, President Akufo-Addo, in the company of Vice President Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia, cast swords for the construction of the dam to begin. It was a colorful ceremony attended by the Nairi, the overlord of the Mamprusi Kingdom, as well as chiefs and elders of the Upper East region and national political figures. In his address, the president explained the economic benefits of the Polugu multipurpose dam when it is completed.
Ladies and gentlemen, you'll recall that on the 21st of February this year, when I delivered the message of the State of the Nation to Parliament, I indicated the government was putting in place plans to avert the perennial flooding caused by the spillage of the Bakri Dam, which has resulted in the constant loss of lives and destruction of properties in the northern sector over the years. I stated that the construction of the dam at Polugu would serve as a reservoir to hold the large volumes of water spilled from the Bagri Dam for irrigation purposes and for the generation of electricity.
He said the project is also crucial to the revival of the Polugu tomato factory.
This project is also very crucial to the realization of the One District, One Factory initiative, as it will serve as a catalyst to developing agro-industry, including reviving the Polugu tomato factory. Other hydroelectric projects, such as Akosombo and Bui, were intended also to have irrigation schemes, but they have unfortunately not materialized. The story of the Polugu multipurpose dam and irrigation project will be different.
Energy Minister John Peter Amewu also gave some details of the electricity generation component of the Polugu multipurpose dam.
The power component of this project, Mr. President, comprises of 60 megawatt hydro plants and 50 megawatt solar power plants. The combinations of the two power plants will generate quite close to 272 gigawatt hours of electricity per year. This, Mr. President, will feed directly into the national grid through the 161 kV transmission line between Tamale and Bolgatanga.
Paramount Chief of Talensi Traditional Area, Tongran Kugbilson Nalebingtang, said the dam is going to bring a lot of relief, not only to the people of Talensi, but the Upper East region as a whole.
This project will certainly be remembered by the people of Ghana, especially within the project area, again, by the people of Ghana, especially we the people within the project area. Again, the benefit of this project is so huge, especially our teeming youth who have always migrated to the southern part of the country to search for non-existent jobs.
Upper East Regional Minister Tangoba Abayege also highlighted the importance of the Polugu multipurpose dam. The project will cost $993 million United States dollars. According to the president, the cost will be borne entirely by government. He said 2,200 skilled and unskilled Ghanaians will benefit from the project, with the contractor mandated to outsource some services under the project to Ghanaians. Chinese firm Sinohydro, a subsidiary of Power China, will build the dam. The firm's vice president, Zhu Shenyang, promised the firm will work by its contract with government.
We sincerely appreciate the great trust and support from the President and the Vice President, leading government at all levels, as well as Chinese embassy in Ghana. Power China has always been rooted and engaged proactively in infrastructure development for many years in Ghana.
Albert Soris reports for Joy News.
And that's it for the Bulletin. I'm Israelite. You have a good night.